Hey, it's Coach Anderson, Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, and we're here to talk to you again today about ACT reading and talk about the importance of ACT reading. Remember, we keep telling you, the better you do on ACT, the better it will be for you when it comes to scholarship opportunities and also being able to get admission into whatever the college, of course, of your choice is. And keep in mind also, what we've been trying to do, of course, is to give you a way to go through and create a strategy that maybe mirrors a little bit about what we're doing or take some of the elements of what we're doing, but what we want you to do is to create a strategy, of course, that works for you. And what we're trying to do is offer you some of the strategies that ACT, of course, has put out and some of the things that we kind of thrown in ourselves that we think can help you be very effective. But in doing so, what we want to do, of course, is go through and review the rest of that test that we were given on ACT reading. And what we did, of course, is what we've been doing, of course, is trying to give you an opportunity to figure out why the answers that were the correct answers are the correct answers. And what we're doing today is we're going to go through and look at the last 31, questions 31 through 35, and give you an explanation why it is that these answers are the best answers. What we have, of course, is passage 4, and these are the annotations. Once again, it's informational text. I love these informational text questions that they give us here. They may give us different themes, but for the most part, we're doing pretty much the same thing on these. And what we're trying to do here is identify what the thesis, the main idea is, what inferences are made, what are supporting details, and what are the culminating ideas. So when we look at this particular type of passage, what we try to do with each one of them is I went through, of course, and highlighted each one of the first, sentences for each one of them. At the end, I try to go through, of course, and highlight, what the culminating, or the conclusion, of course, of it is, and what the thesis or the main idea is. And you can have main ideas, of course, that you can go through for each individual paragraph. But what we try to do is give you an explanation or try to highlight or annotate the things that we think may be relevant when it comes to answering those questions. Once again, there are some questions that we need to ask ourselves in terms of what is the thesis, what are the supporting details, what inferences can be made, what conclusions can be drawn. And once again, for me, it's easier for me to just go through and answer those questions after I read it. But if it doesn't work for you, then don't do that. And I'm not gonna go over what I found, but I did make some brief notes in terms of what questions I wanted to ask myself in these, and it made it easier for me to go through and find the correct answers. Question 31, the fourth paragraph, lines 63 through 71, and we'll pull that out for you and let you look at it, marks a shift in the focus of the passage from A, plants that store water above ground to plants that store water below ground, B, animals that don't go dormant to animals that do go dormant, C, desert-dwelling plants to desert-dwelling animals, D, inhabitants of the Negev Desert to inhabitants of the northern Australian deserts. Well, let's look at line 63 through 71 and pull it out and see what it says. Well, you notice I started at 63 over here, but I went back because I wanted to say what the transition was. So I went back a couple of paragraphs before that and see what they were talking about first, and then, before it transitioned to this. Well, over here, I noticed they were talking about plants, like the saguaro cactus. And then over here, they were talking about desert animals. And I remember going over the answer choices, and one of the answer choices had to do with, desert-dwelling plants and desert-dwelling animals. And so for me, once again, the answer is the answer. And it clearly states that at first, in the early parts of the paragraphs, they were talking about desert-dwelling plants. And after that, they transition to desert-dwelling animals. So sometimes the answer is just what the answer is. And based on just me looking, I didn't have to do a whole lot of reading there. And I was able to understand. And I verified my answer by going through and reading it. But for the most part, I kind of, figured it out pretty quickly just by looking backwards a little bit into the previous paragraph and making a connection that way. Question 32, based on the passage, the author's use of the word measuring, line 12, most nearly describes the way that some desert plants do what? And I know what measuring is. And when I think of measuring, I think about, seeing how much volume something has, how much weight something has, how tall something is, or how long something is, what area something is. So when I'm thinking about measuring, I'm thinking about mathematics here. And in terms of looking at it, so I look at that and it says, based on the passage, the author's use of the word measure in line 12 most nearly describes the way some desert plants do what? Have roots that are extremely sensitive to moisture levels in the soil, have methods of delaying seed germination until a certain amount of water is present, are visibly more vigorous after rainfall, can calculate how many inches of rain that are falling in recent days. So when I start looking at it, there are a lot of things that make some math references here. So I can't be fooled here. I have to go back and do my research and delve into line 12 and see what context we're talking about here. So when we look at line 12, it says some achieve this balance, and I'm assuming it says some plants achieve this balance on a tightrope by measuring rainfall. In other words, some plants actually have a mechanism for measuring how much rainfall they get. So they have chemicals in their seeds that inhibit germination, and a minimum amount of rain is required before they're released out. In other words, it's here. Every time it rains, it's talking about these plants have the ability to know to measure how much rain actually falls. And they won't germinate or send seeds out to germinate until after they've reached the level of moisture they have. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. And by me understanding that, gives me a proper understanding in terms of what this question answer could be. And the answer, very simply, and it pretty much tells me, because sometimes the answer is what the answer is. You don't have to do a whole lot of figuring. It tells us pretty much what the answer is based on that particular explanation. Have methods of delaying seed germination to a certain amount of water present. They actually measure the amount of water they receive before they allow seeds to be available for germination. Sometimes the answer is what the answer is. Don't overthink it. All right, which of the following statements best summarizes the process by which the frog Cyclorana placifolia survives the desert? Now, once again, pro tip once again. If you have to read something and you have to pronounce that 15 or 20 times, you're going to run yourself crazy here. So what you should do is, instead of reading the way I just read it this way. Which of the following statements best summarizes the process by which the frog survives in the desert? Okay. A, the frog stores water in its body, buries itself, and conserves water until emerging in the next rain. The frog buries itself, waits for rain, absorbs rainwater through its skin, and emerges. C, the frog forms a nearly waterproof cocoon around itself and buries itself and waits to emerge until it needs water. The frog buries itself, absorbs water through its skin, and goes dormant until springtime. Well, all I gotta do is find this frog, Cyclorana placifolia, and see what they tell us of surrounding that. So when I pull that out, I find that word, that Latin word for the frog here, and it says the frog from blah, 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 whatever, from the northern Australian desert fills up and greatly expands its urinary bladder to use as a water bag before burying itself in the soil, where it spends the most of the year waiting for the next rain. Sometimes the answer is just what the answer is, and I know that I just saw that. And the frog stores water in its body. It just tells us more specifically what it does. But the frog stores water in its body, buries itself, and conserves water until emerging after the next rain. Sometimes the answers are just what the answers are. Don't overthink them. Don't try to take a square peg and fit it into a round hole. Question 34, based on the passage, which of the following plants and animals employ a communal strategy to survive in the desert? So communal. Now I know communal means community. People working together or animals working together, okay? So based on the strategy, so that word kind of gives me a clue into what the answer is going to be. And I could probably answer this if I just see anything that talks about families, community, somebody helping something or something helping something. I can answer that question because I know what that word communal means. So based on the passage, which of the following plants and animals employ a communal strategy to surviving in the desert? So we're going to look and see what plants and see what animals do. The saguaro, F says the saguaro cactus only. G, the saguaro cactus and the frog Cyclorana placifolia only. The frog Cyclorana placifolia and the honeypot ants only, or the honeypot ants only. Well, I know already about the frog. I know what the frog does. The frog, drinks as much water as it can, expands its urinary bladder, and then buries itself. You don't say anything about him helping somebody else or doing things like that, so I can eliminate him already. And I know that just based on answers I've done to other questions. So it has frog here and cactus, so I'll eliminate this one just because of the frog, and then this one here because of the frog and the honeypot ant. I'll eliminate those two. So in my mind, the only possible answers could be the saguaro cactus, which I don't know a whole lot about, and the honeypot ant, which I don't know anything about. So what I do is go through and look. And when I was looking at it, I found this just by going through and looking, find the honeypot ant. It says they have evolved a solution that combines water storage with energy storage. Ants typically feed each other. Ants feeding each other, that means it's them cooperating with each other, working together, community. So in looking at it, so they feed each other, and some of the larger worker ants may take up more liquid than others, and others may bring more. Those that take the fluid may gorge themselves until they distend their abdomens up to the size of a grape, by which time they are unable to move from the spot. They then hang in groups of dozens to hundreds from the ceiling of a chamber in the ant nest, where they are then specialized so-called repletes that later regurgitate fluid when the colony members are no longer bringing the fluid in, but rather needing it. In other words, they give each other fluid. Now, I went through and looked at saguaro cactus. Each saguaro cactus operated on its own. So I know based on this evidence that the answer is going to be the honeypot ant, and the answer is the honeypot ant only. It's the only one that employs the communal strategy where they help each other out. 35, final question for lesson number 19. The passage most strongly suggests that compared to the frog, the honeypot ants are unique in that they, A, can store water inside their bodies. Okay, well the frog can store it inside their body, and then the ant can, just by answering the last couple of questions, I know that both of them can store it inside their bodies. Live in Australian deserts, okay. Combine water storage with energy storage, go dormant during dry times, okay. So based on that, I pulled out, it says honeypot ants have involved a solution that combines water storage with energy storage. I just saw that. The frog from the northern Australia, so here, so both of them can be from Australia. So the best answer is, it says the passage most strongly suggests that compared to the frog, the honeypot ants are unique, because both of them are, can be found in Australia. That's not unique. The one thing that makes them different is the fact that the ant has water storage. He does water storage and energy storage at the same time. The frog doesn't do that. So that's what makes the honeypot ant unique. Okay, what we try to do, of course, is go through and give you the answers to the questions for answers, 31 through 35. And what we try to do is give you some rationale in terms of why they, of course, were the correct answers. And sometimes, once again, don't make it more difficult than it has to be. Sometimes the correct answer is just the correct answer. And if you're dogged in your determination, go through and find the answer. Sometimes you can do it without even having to read the passage. But you have to be careful and make sure that you do your proper annotations, do your proper highlighting or your writing down when you're doing your annotations in terms of taking your notes, and then trust yourself, okay? Remember, ACT reading and ACT, of course, is very, very important because, once again, it affords you the opportunity, of course, to gain a great deal of scholarship money that you can pay for college and get in whatever college you want. And once again, it'll make you your parents' favorite child. And that should be more of a motivation to do it for anything, so that you make your parents proud. So with that, this is Coach Ans from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online. The next time that I see you, we'll be looking at the last 5 questions for the sample ACT reading test that we took. And we hope that upon finishing that you'll be able to go through and do better on the next one that we take, provided you didn't kick this one in the head and do real well on this one, which I know you did. So this is Coach Anderson. We'll see you next time.